Welcome to another video. This is Sanjay Prakash and today we will discuss exception handling in Power Automate. Most of the times we create Power Automate but we never speak about or we never implement the exception handling. So how to capture or how to catch the runtime errors and handle it properly. Now let us create a flow and show you that. So I'm on the flow section in the Power Apps. I'll click on new flow and click on instant flow, for example. So let's say I'm giving a name, create student flow, right? Now what I can do, I can choose manual trigger and click on create. Now I can add some input parameters. One is text, another text, right, and another text one. So first is name, which will represent as name parameter of student. Then we have let's say email, and the last one is phone, right? Now as because this is the instant flow, when someone can run this button, click this button, the Power Automate will accept these three values and try to process by taking these input parameters. So I will add another step. My intention is I want to create a student record in Dynamics 365 or Dataverse. So I can choose Microsoft Dataverse connector and click on add a new row. And here I can choose the table name. The table name is student. So the table name is student. Let me show student. So this is the student one. I can click this. Now whenever you create a new row, it is asking all the mandatory fields, right? Let's say I want to select male, age, gender, and email I want to assign from the input parameter. The input parameter is available here, email, right? Because this is the email input parameter, isn't it? So go to email and search email in the dynamic content and assign this. Name I want to assign from the input parameter, and I will pass phone number, right? So simple. I have created a manual trigger flow. When you click that flow or click that button, it will create a student record by giving this informations. Now click on save. Okay, this is simple. There is no complexity here. But let us see how it works. I will pass all these informations, and in one test, in another test, I will just remove this phone number. I will just pass email and name, and let us see what happens. Click on test, click on manual, click on test. Now it is asking the name, right? Let's say student 1. Email is student1@gmail.com. and phone number, let's say, right, and the round the flow. You see everything is mandatory now. All the parameters are mandatory. Why it is mandatory? Because it is assigned to the dynamic fields. Let me click on run and click on done, right? So it is now triggered and it is trying to create a student record. And now the flow runs successfully. So this record is created successfully in Dataverse. All these informations, right? There is no error. So I am fine. This is the happy path, right? Now let me intentionally change something so that it will throw error, right? So I'll go here, and instead of this phone being being mandatory, I'll just change this as optional. So make this optional. So what will happen? I made it optional and I'll save it. That means whenever you run this flow, the system or the Power Automate will not mandate this phone number to provide, because I made this optional. So what I will do now, click on test, click on manual test. Now see, it is asking email is mandatory, red asterisk, name is mandatory, red asterisk, but phone number not mandatory. So I can keep this blank while creating student. Let me give here let's say student2 and example student2@gmail.com, and I will not provide phone number because it is optional, right? So click on run the flow and done. Now see, the error is coming. What is the error it is coming? Unable to process template language, add a new row 0, right? It is telling something. The error is below, so cannot evaluate because the text2 property does not exist. So there is some issue here, right? Whatever the issue, but it is throwing some error. That means we have to handle this. How to handle this error? We need to implement some try catch functionality in Power Automate. So how it can be done? So it can be done through scopes, right? If you click on this, let me edit this. Now what we can do instead, so this action step, we can keep it inside a scope. So scope is the main thing which can be used for implementing try catch finally. You know how to implement try catch in codings and all that, right? So like that we will create three scopes. So after this manual trigger flow, add an action and choose scope. Right? Now here you choose control and here you will see scope. So create 3 scopes. I want to add another scope, control, scope. I'll add another scope, 3 scopes I want, right? So rename this first scope as try and this one catch, and the third one is finally. So what this finally represents? This finally represents that whether there is an error inside try block, it will be handled in the catch scope, and after that whatever you define in the action, finally action, it will execute. Number 2, if there is no error, the catch block will not be called, right? Still the finally block will be called. So whether it is an exception or not, finally block must be executed, but catch block will only be executed whenever there is a error in the try block. So this is our requirement, right? So what you will keep in the try block? Keep those actions which triggers, which might potentially throw some error. So this step throws some error, right? So I can drag and drop it inside the scope. Just open this and drag and drop, right? Now inside try scope, I have added this adding new student. So rename this create new student. Don't change anything, right? So now if the step or the action step inside this try block throws an error, what I want to execute this catch scope. So what I can do, I will go to the run after configuration, configure run after option for this catch block and define the checkbox has failed. That means if try block has failed, then only execute this, right? And in the finally block, whatever I'll write down, I'll configure that configure run after option for this finally block as if catch block is successful, whether it is success or it is skipped. If it is success means catch block success means there is an error in try block and catch block is handled properly. That's why catch block is success. Skipped means there is no error in try block and the catch block is skipped. So catch block will always work, catch scope, only if there is an error in the try scope. So remember this. For the catch, you should only use has failed try block. For finally block, you have to use catch block as is successful or is skipped. Why is successful is skipped? This catch block will be skipped whenever there is no error. Is successful will identified whenever catch block is executed because of some error in try block. Understand this. Now click done. Now we have successfully configured the run after option of this catch and finally. So now I want to do something in the catch block, how to handle this error. Now I can define a variable here before try block. Let me define a variable control. Sorry, I can use a variable. So first time the variable will be initialized and I can give a name as flag. I can give a string and by default I will give age success. Okay, so I have initialized a variable whose name is flag and I have given the value as success. So by default it is success. Now it will go to try and it will execute this function, execute this action, right? So if there is any error in the try block, it will go to catch block because we have configured the run after option. Now I will go to catch and try to handle this error using two options. One is I will set the variable, this variable value as failed, and will send an email. So add action. I want to first send an email. I can use Gmail. I can use send email, right? So I can define to whom I want to send. I want to send to myself for now. For demo purpose, I am using my email ID. Subject: student creation failed for student name. I can define the name of the student because in the student name it is passed from the trigger, button trigger, and here I can define dear admin, the student creation failed. The below data are passed for student creation. So I will define here what data the user passed. First I want to define name, which name is passed as input parameter, this one. Then email, which email is passed as input parameter. So don't use data first name, use the email from input parameter, button trigger. Name, email and phone. Right, I can use phone here. Right, now I have sent an email and I want to set the flag value to failed. Why? Because it is in catch scope, right? So when the flow will come to catch scope, that means there is an error in try block. So I want to set the variable value age, use set variable and choose the variable name flag and define failed. That means whenever the flow will come to the catch block or catch scope, it will send an failure email to the admin and it will set the variable value as failed, right? Now catch block is done. Now finally what I want to do, whether it is failed or whether it is success, I want to create a task, right? So I can click on add an action and create a task. I can use Dataverse. I want to create a new row and choose tasks, right? You can define a subject, new student creation status, right? Now I want to define the variable value. The variable is flag, that's it. So only the subject I want. You can also choose regarding object ID, right? So that this task can be identified from your CRM against that record. Record is your student record, isn't it? But the point here is I don't want to choose the regarding object as student, because the student at this section try block has not been created for failure cases. That's why I don't want to keep any regarding right now. Okay, so what I will do, I will now collapse. So this finally scope will every time it will execute whether there is an error in this block or there is no error in this block. That's why the beauty of finally block. So try, catch, finally. Now save it and try to test this. Now I will pass all values first, because there is no error for all values, right? So click on test. I will pass all values. It will check the Gmail connector. I will give, let's say, Rakesh Sharma, and email rakesh@gmail.com, and I will give a phone number, and I will click on run through. Click on done. Now you will observe that the variable initialized, try block executed, and final block is executed. Catch block is skipped. You see here why it is skipped? Because there is no error in try block. It successfully created the student with this information, right? And the ID is also generated here, right? That's why, as because there is no error in this try scope, catch block skipped. So I have also the final block to execute. So it created a task. What is the task? A new student creation success. And if you want to add some description with other information, you can add in the description. That's fine. But I have not added. So this scenario you understand. I have passed 3 parameters. All these parameter values I have passed: name, email, and phone. And this try block is success. So catch block skipped, final block executed. Now let me run another test, but this time I will not pass phone number. I will skip phone number, which will give error, right? Let's say Shreyans Khan gmail.com, and I will not provide the phone number. Now I can click on run. Now this time I am expecting there will be error in try block, right? Now try block had some error, but there is an issue in the catch block itself. What is the catch block itself? It is trying to provide phone number, but it is not giving. So what we will do, this is something else. Let me go to here. Let me do not pass phone number right now here. Okay. And in the try block, what I will do, I'll just make it blank. Okay. And in the catch block, I don't want to mention this phone number. So now test this. I'll provide something here, Shreya and Shreya@gmail.com. Now I will keep phone number blank and click on run flow. So what it will do, it will give error in the try block. You will see that here. You see the try block gives error. Why? There might be some other reason, right? You see some error is there. Bad request, attribute soft phone number cannot be null. That means you are not passing the phone number. That's why the creation of student is failed, isn't it? Now the point here is, although it is throwing error in the try block, I have caught the error here in the catch block. I have sent an email to me that student creation failed, name is this and email is this, and I have set the variable age failed. Now in the final block, a task is created with student creation failed. You understand? So how to handle this try catch exceptions, right? So accordingly, in your project, if you have multiple action steps, keep inside a try scope first, then handle it properly in the catch and finally. I hope you understand how it is done. Thank you guys for your time. Practice this on your own and let me know in the comment. Thank you everyone.